Hello and welcome to Endurance Minded. It's the podcast that aims to redefine what it means to reach our full potential by exploring how movement and mindset impacts our lives and how we can all work to show up as the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Taylor Thomas, founder and coach at TEC, and on this episode I welcome back Christine Hernandez. Christine, among other things, is a friend of mine. She is a co-founder with me in a joint venture called Impact Initiative, where we focus on giving leadership skills to teams and entrepreneurs, business owners, and leaders around the world. She is a mental performance coach at TEC. She is a business owner herself. The list goes on. And we wanted to connect in this episode to have an honest, vulnerable, genuine conversation about goal setting and how scary that can be, what it means to set goals from our perspective, the inherent risk associated with setting goals. And we wanted to do this because I think it's so easy, or it's so commonplace, that those out in the world, including myself, talking about goal setting, talking about pursuing our full potential, talking about pushing the boundaries, talking about showing up for ourselves and reaching our full potential, whatever that language is, so often those talking heads don't acknowledge how hard it is to set goals, to show up for those goals, to continue to push ourselves. And so often all that we hear is the success. All that we hear is how the person on the other side of the screen or the podcast or the documentary or the magazine or whatever, how that person accomplished their goals, how nothing got in their way, how nothing could stop them, how they were so clear and focused and wouldn't let anything disrupt their forward movement. And that's not telling the full story. The fact of the matter is that en route to reaching our goals, we are going to be challenged. We are going to have to face failure. We're going to have to face self-doubt. We're going to have to understand why that goal matters to us in the first place. And so this is Christine and I's honest, real-time reflection on what that's looked and sounded like for us. We purposefully didn't prepare for this podcast so that it could be authentic, so that we could give ourselves the space and time to process in real time, so that those of you listening can get, hopefully, just a genuine, honest reflection of what it looks like to be at this time of the year and reflect, and to acknowledge that there are lots of highs and lows, that there is lots of failure, that things are hard, that it's not as straightforward as we had hoped or imagined it would be. But with all of that, it's still a massive opportunity. We're still excited about the year ahead. We're still clear and focused and connected to who we are and what we want to do and the impact that we want to make on the world and those around us. And so we do this so that, or we did this so that you can see how important reflection is, how important that pattern interrupt is, how valuable it is to look back and give yourself the opportunity for honest feedback and reflection, and to use language that supports that honesty. When did I fail? What did that look like? How did that make me feel? What did I mean? What did I make that failure mean about me? And then on the other side, when did I see success? What led to that success? How did that make me feel? What did I do with that success when I reached it? How did I define success in the first place? So there's so much opportunity here with reflection. And so we just want this to be, again, a conversation that sheds some light on two people that are trying to do their best in the world and create an impact, and that the path to doing that for any of us who step outside of our comfort zone and want to push for things that are bigger or greater than ourselves is really, really uncomfortable, and it's really, really hard, and it is fraught with all kinds of good days and bad days. And so this hopefully is an opportunity, is in some small way your pattern interrupt. It's a chance to check in with yourself. It's a chance to carve out some time and listen to two people explore what this last year has looked like for them, and how we can hopefully help you gain some clarity into the year ahead, get excited about your goals. To that end, I want to mention one last time that we are hosting a workshop for Impact Initiative tomorrow. So if you find yourself struggling with this type of reflection, if you're not sure where to focus your energy, if you're not sure what questions to ask, how to define success and failure, then I want to invite you to this workshop. It's tomorrow. It's virtual. It's going to be at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and you can find the link to that in our show notes. It's called the No BS Look Back. And the reason that we call it that is because we want to give you some real tactical experience, some tactical guidance to reflect and actually move forward in a positive way, right? So this is not some overly grandiose, laden with leadership jargon, goal-setting exercise. This is a tactical place for you to focus your attention, to get support from other leaders, business owners, people that aren't career focused, but just want to focus their attention on the year ahead. So this is your chance if you feel like you need a dedicated space to reflect and understand what the last year means for how you move into this year. I want to invite you to our workshop tomorrow. Again, that's 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. It's going to be hosted virtually. It's an hour and a half, and you're going to leave with some very real resources. You're going to leave with one-year goals. You're going to leave with a very clear understanding of what the last year meant for you and how that can inform your year ahead, so you can have a year that you're actually excited about. You can set goals that you're excited to sink your teeth into. So again, tomorrow, the 17th at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. You can find the link to sign up in the show notes. If you need support or guidance in this space in any way, I really, really encourage you to show up. This has been a massively impactful workshop. We've done it for the past couple of years now, and it has always yielded really great benefits for the participants. So I hope to see some of our listeners there. It would mean a lot to me if I can support any of you guys in this way to help you get excited about the year and actually feel like you're setting goals that are in alignment with who you are, what you want, how you want to build relationships, how you want to show up in the world, and for yourself. So I hope to see you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, link in the show notes. And without further ado, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Christine Hernandez. All right, Christine, back on Endurance Minded, and we're going to talk about goals. And what we are not going to do is talk about goals like so many people talk about goals, which is through the lens of, or with a tone of, seemingly never had having struggled with accomplishing them, right? So a lot of times in leadership space, in the athletic space, really runs the gamut. Like it's all over. We hear all these talking heads and these people that are like, set your goals and just get clear and accomplish, and they don't admit that there's been a lot of times, weeks, months, years, where they failed. And so we're going to talk about all of the times, or at least going to kick things off with just an honest conversation, an honest admitting that it's not always super straightforward. And there's an inherent recognition of failure when we talk about goal setting. And maybe even if we set the appropriate goals, that failure has to be a part of that. Um, and I think that's one of the things that I really am most interested in kind of changing the narrative around goal setting is that if we are setting goals that push us, or if we are interested in continued growth, if we're interested in continuing to push ourselves in whatever capacity, in whatever space in our life that is, I think that there really has to be failure has to be a part of that equation. otherwise otherwise it's too easy, right? It's almost like otherwise we would have done it already, because if you don't fail, you're playing safe. Like the only way success comes is on the other side of failure. And so there, I think, is a real need to change the narrative around failure and how it plays into our goals, and that if it doesn't happen, we should probably be concerned. Now, what we do with that failure and how we respond to it and what we make it mean about us is a different conversation. Um, but yeah, what's that look like for you? I don't know. Let's dive in. I could go on and on about all my thoughts and feelings and hypotheses about failure and goal setting.
What we really want to do is talk around the conversation and not really talk about what it's looked like, right? Because that's the uncomfortable piece of this conversation. So, um, as you were talking, I was thinking about my relationship with goal setting and failure. And I'm like, oh, I think my relationship has looked like this. Like this is the visual that comes to my mind. I'm going to use a UFC visual because I love UFC fighting. Taylor knows that it's like my guilty pleasure, and many people judge me for it, but I don't care. I'm going to state it. I love it. I love to watch someone get punched in the face. I'm just going to say it because that's actually what happens when we set goals and we fail. So failure and goal setting looks like this. I'm like, I'm gonna do this fight. And I'm like, I'm gonna do it. Actually, I did this like when I joined TDC. I'm like, I'm going to, I'm going to do a triathlon because it's like the thing that everybody does here. And then like I signed up and I didn't actually do my research and I like never made it to the race. So I just like I'll set a goal and I'm like, I'm gonna do this thing. And then I'm like, just kidding. I don't even make my ass into the ring. Like I don't even make it to freaking fight day. I'm just like, nah, I'm good. So I just like avoid it. I'm like, let's go. And then I buy the things, I set it all up, and then I'm like, nah, just next. And no one ever hears about it. Like, if you don't ask me about it, I'm like, never happened. Wasn't going to do it. Didn't make it to the ring. Then the other extreme, it's like two extremes. I have a pendulum here. The other extreme is that I literally make it to the fight and I am like pinned straight up failure. And I am like so freaking stubborn that I will like let someone break my arm before I tap out. Like we watched a fight. My husband and I watched a fight a couple weeks ago. Homeboy was like, we're like, just freaking call it, bro. Tap out. Your ankle is going to break. And I feel like the people around me are like screaming that at me. Sometimes they're like, give it up. Like just tap the fuck out. Stop. You're going to break something and then it breaks and you're like, damn it. Like I should have tapped out way sooner. I should have been in connection with my body, in connection with what mattered to me. So I feel like for me, it's like two extremes. I'm like, the thing that I probably should do, I like sometimes don't even make it to the ring. And the thing that I should tap out on, I'm just I'm not gonna give it up because I'm just that stubborn. So I feel like for me, there's been this like weird pendulum. And it's like it's actually very seldom that like very few and far between that I like find the zone and actually nail it. And like I'm like, I won the fight. That was amazing. I didn't end up breaking a leg or a limb or whatever. And I actually made it to the race or I made it to the fight, right? Like, I feel like so many times goals can look so linear and yet they're not. Like, if you look over the course of our life, it's like it's all over the place, right? There's never this like clean straight line that we're like, I planned the thing, I decided, I won it. I won the fight. Like it just doesn't happen like that. And I think that when we're the talking head, that's actually how we sound. I've had so many clients tell me that. They're like, "How do you do so much?" I'm like, "Fucking chaos." Like, how do I do so much? It's like a juggling freaking match all the time. Like, what is even happening in my life? And they're like, "It looks so easy and seamless." I'm like, "You're clearly not in my shoes because it is all things crazy up in here." Taylor's stayed with me, so he knows. Like, it's just chaos. And I don't think nobody avoids the chaos when we're planning goals and we're experiencing failure, but it's actually staying connected, right? Like on both sides of that story or that visual, there's disconnection from the goals and disconnection from the process. Therefore we get hurt and then we just don't try again. And I think that's the hardest part is it's like we make it mean something about us and then we just don't try again. It's like I can't do it or I'm going to take it too far. So there's all these beliefs in between that I think the next time I step out and go, man, am I going to get back in the ring? I'm like, I don't really know. I can't do it. If I like gave up, and then on the other side, I'm like, I can't. I'll literally break a limb or almost kill myself. Literally, I have those stories. And you're like, that sucks because then we just don't get in the ring again. And then we play it safe and stay comfortable. And this is something I've been thinking about so much. And I was like, oh man, we should do like a program about comfort because comfort, everyone's like, sugar is the greatest addiction in America. And I'm like, BS. I call bullshit. Comfort is the greatest addiction in America. We are fucking comfortable and addicted to the need for comfort. And that's why we love sugar is because it like makes us comfortable. It like gets our endorphins going for nothing. But I think that's like the biggest thing that stops us is comfort from reaching our goals or comfort actually can create the need to not stop, right? Like pushing it too far. Because really, why I push it too far is comfort because I don't want to fail. So I'm like, I'm just going to keep going until I don't fail. And in return, I fail, but I'm trying to avoid failure because I want to stay comfortable. I don't want anyone to know I'm a failure. So I'm just going to like let someone break my leg and call it good, right? So it still goes back to comfort, don't you think?
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, And I think, yeah, I mean, comfort, we are. I think that maybe isn't even inherently why people struggle with goal setting is because even naturally we are drawn to comfort, right? Path of least resistance. I mean that our brains seek that, our bodies seek that, and so we have to purposefully put ourselves in places of discomfort to grow. And there is no better um, example of that than fitness, right? If you want to get more fit, you got to get uncomfortable, right? You got to run harder, you got to cycle faster, you got to lift more weight, you got to, right? There's literally no way to build fitness and stay comfortable, right? Even walking, right? Something low, it doesn't have to be linked to intensity. You have to walk further than you did before. You have to, you have to stay on your feet for longer, whatever. So I think that's maybe even yeah, that's a great place to start is like when we are thinking about being growth minded, um, reaching new places or accomplishing new things. At the onset of that, you have to make peace with discomfort. You have to go into it, and I think that's where a lot of people get derailed, right? Is they it's a really sexy goal, right? Like to your point, not to pick on you, but like sign up for a triathlon. That's a really sexy thing to do. Well, then you got to fucking train for it. And that sucks, right? That's hard. It's cold, it's dark, you got to start way before you think, it's not 6 weeks out. It's 6 months out, and you got to build it. There's all kinds of barriers and discomfort. And so with goal setting, that initial like step of doing signing up for the big, to the Brene Brown big hairy audacious goal, like that actually is exciting. That's a sexy thing. And it's people are like, oh, it's scary. Like, yeah, but it's scary in like a sexy way, right? It's scary in that like you can go tell your friends that you signed up for this thing, and you can get that external validation, you can get that, that outward facing input. That feels good. Then you got to go back home and you got to do the work to get there. And that's the uncomfortable piece. And so yeah, like the discomfort is actually not in setting the goal, it's in what happens right after that. And I think there is, and then I think to piggyback on that, like what you said, where you stick with it too long, then our ego gets pulled into it, and then we don't, because we haven't made peace with the inherent need for failure, we we stick with it for way too long, right? We know it doesn't work. We know that it's hurting us. We know that we don't give a shit about it anymore, and we continue to do it. And that also is why I think people hate goal setting exercises, is because they reflect on it and they've been pushing with their nose to the grindstone towards goals that are just wrecking them, right? They're not excited about them. They're not, but they don't want to quit because it's a goal, right? They don't want to fail. They don't want to, whatever that looks like, whether you just say, hey, this is not the direction I'm going anymore, or you actually fail in some way. You've taken it to the extent to which you can take that thing and it doesn't work, or you weren't able to accomplish it. Um, and I think that's, people get a bad taste in their mouth because that's so often the experience. You stick with it because of um, what failure, what we think failure means about us, um, and what we imagine that's going to mean about, what people say about us. Or like you said, you're like, I don't want people to know that I failed. I don't want people to know, right? Like that's human nature, right? We want to, as much as people are like, I don't give a shit what people think about me. Um, you give a shit what some people think about you, right? Somebody's opinion matters to you. um, and and that's okay. So yeah, I think it's like there's an ego piece. I definitely think um, the comfort piece is a big part of that. Um, we're seeing more and more literature on that, right? There's the book The Comfort Crisis, which talks a lot about that. It's a great read. Um, so so to that end, then like let's imagine a scenario where somebody's like, okay, I got it. I can be uncomfortable. That's fine. And then I can also remove my ego from these goals, and that's fine. Um, like then what? Right? We set goals. How has that played out for you? And maybe give me like what's a version of success and a version of failure
Mm.
in your experiences?
So yeah, that's a good question. I It's funny because like I used to say that like success was staying in the game. Like actually over the last year, I think I've said that like 1 million times. And then I ended this year and I was like, success was not staying in the game. Failure was staying in the game. Like even saying it, I'm like, it's
Yeah, I mean that's the ego piece. Like that's what we were talking about, right? You stick with it, and I've done the same thing. But yeah, like
so bad.
you build it up where you're like, oh, if I'm just like strong enough to battle it out, then that's going to be success. Like I'm stronger than everybody else because I can just put up with more bullshit than everybody else. There's a time to cut and run, you know, and like
Mhm.
fail. And maybe we can get into this, but this is like the failing fast thing. That's a whole nother part of this conversation. But um,
I think that's my question
yeah,
though. It's like this is actually a question I've asked myself, just like being 100% transparent because that's what this is about today. But it's like that's a question that I consistently ask myself and I think, we help people do get their core values and I think that helps and having your vision and your mission helps, but like it's still there's still this like tactical piece where it becomes very like there's just so much gray area if you're not like totally 100% connected. And I think this is something you and I talked about. It's like, man, like where is it? Where are you just signing up for like the stress? You're like, man, stress and hard, it's gonna grow the muscle. And like I'm so pumped about that. And you can like stay in the game and you're like, yeah, like I'm doing it. I'm not giving up. I'm in the game. I'm in the fight. But like where, and I think like this was a question at one point, like what is the difference between misery and hard, or like that like being miserable and just like staying in the hard. And we've talked a little bit about that. But I think that like, and there is a difference there, but the bigger question for me, I think over the last year and probably my entire life at this point is like, when is it the right kind of hard? Like, when is it the right hard? Like I love burpees. Everybody else, I'm like, give me burpees all day long. Everyone else that I ever work out with, they're like burpees. And I'm like, give me the burpees. I'm like, I love it. It's like full body. You get your heart rate pumped up. Like there's something so freaking annoying about burpees. And also, if you just did burpees every day, you would be way more fit than you are today in like 6 months. It would change unless you do them often. And I love them because I have done them often. Like that was always my claim to fame when I could like out burpee anyone. Not really great at pull-ups, so that's probably the hard I should be leaning into because that's never been my ability. But I think that like, but that's the point, right? Like we always do the thing we that comes easier, and is it easier or is it more enjoyable? And that's something I even struggle with. Like people are like, I hate running. I'm going to run a race. And I'm like, there's so many ways to move your body. If you hate running, why are you going to do that? And it's like, when is the answer? Yes, do the hard thing and like lean in. And how do you make that decision to be like, literally, you could pick anything else. If you like to cycle, if you like to dance, if you like to like just choose anything you like and it'll probably be a better experience. But if you're like, I want to be a better runner, it's like that's like to me, that's the hard. I'm just like, or that's the place I think I get stuck. So many people get stuck because over the last year, to go back to your question, over the last year, I should have given up. And like specifically in relationships, I should have said, no, like this is not the relationship for me. I don't need to be in this relationship. But I'm like, oh, we're still in the game. We're having the hard conversations. And then I realized at the end of the year, and honestly, probably because of our relationship and like a couple key relationships that I have, that I'm like, it's just not hard. It just works. And I don't even have to try at it. And it's fun and it's enjoyable. And like, I actually like, yeah, we do hard shit together, but like it's not bad. It's not hard to do relationship with the right people. And it totally reframed success and failure. I was like, I'm still in the game, having hard conversations. We're still in it. And then at the end of this year, I'm like, damn it. It paid off with a zero return because it wasn't the right relationship. And at that point, hard did become miserable. And I should have gave up in March. I should have gave up and tapped out in March. And yeah, I pulled it through the end of the year and then watched everything freaking crumble. And I'm like, for what? Like there was zero return. And that's so frustrating, specifically in business. Like, why do we do that to ourselves? Well, if I go back to myself, I'm like, I did it because I didn't want to give up. And I'm like, oh no, we can make this work. And I think sometimes we just have, when I always call it catchphrase. You have to know your catchphrases. Like if I would have been aware of my catchphrases, I would have been like, oh, I'm saying that a lot. I should probably catch myself and reframe and make a change. Like now, you're on fire. You're using your catchphrase. Freaking shut that shit down. But no, I just kept powering through. Not going to tap out. Still having hard conversations. Not failure. So I think part of it too starts with like defining what success and failure is. And I'm going to get real woo woo for a second. I'm going to go all fluff, Taylor. Taylor loves my fluff. Um, I think you have to understand how you want to feel. Like if I would have just stopped at the beginning of this year and been like, how do I want to feel in relationship? How do I want to feel in relationship? And how do I want to be able to show up for a relationship? And how do I want people to show up for me on our evaluation sheet, we have a great question. It's called what's a 10 look like from a perspective of others supporting you? Super good at supporting others, but like the other way around, not so much. If I would have just connected to that one question on our evaluation sheet, I would have pulled the plug in March, not in November or December. So I think that for me, that's what this year brought. It was like, tap out quick. Like, be aware, understand where failure is, and just call it. Like, just call it failure, just tap out. And then failure almost, I think at that point, like becomes success. Like, actually, maybe that's where it is. This is real time processing, but maybe success for me this year is being able to like stop and give things up, prune. Like, it's actually letting go faster and not having to stay in the fight. I think that's actually how I should be, or like want to reframe success this year, is having the ability to give up and let things go when they're not working and when they're not enjoyable and when they're not the right kind of like stress and hard. I just need to like give it up. That's actually a reframe for success this year. So I think maybe it starts with that. It's like, define success, because if success means that you're actually doing the things that you care about and you're making the impact that you want to make with who you want to make them, well, that means that you have to prune people faster this year, Christine. That's actually what it means. And I hate that. I hate that so much. But I also hate, maybe even a little bit more, getting to the end of the year and having a zero return on all of my investment. That sucks even more. So, yeah, that's what it's
Mm-hmm.
looked like. And real time processing, because we're just barely into January. So, but if we don't have all of those journeys, then like we're not doing anything big either, right? So, what's that look like for you? Like, give us real example, Taylor, of what success and failure looked like over this last year.
Yeah. Well, I'll go back. As much as I often hate the fluffy stuff, it actually isn't. I was thinking like, I think it does matter how you feel. Like that's where my mind went. Was like, how um how do you define success and failure? Like, what does it look like in the process? How do you know when to pull the plug, when to not? I think it can't be, the sum total of the effort can't be miserable, right? I think it matters like how you feel. That's the difference between like misery and being hard. It's it should be hard. It should not be miserable, right? Like, and and people ask me that all the time, and they're like, oh, like, you're running multiple businesses, and that like how, oh my god, like I can't, like you work so much and this, that, and the other, and like I can honestly answer and be like, this is what I'm meant to do. Like I love it. Yes, it is hard. Yes, it can be stressful. Yes, yes, well, all the things. Fine. I This is it. Like this is my genius zone. This is where, in all of the areas that I get to show up, um, overarchingly, I'm I'm pumped. Even when I have a shitty day, I like solving those problems. I like, so I'm not saying that to sound like I have it all sorted out or I've like struck gold and I'm just floating, and everything. But again, like the sum total of that has to be enjoyable. You have to feel like you're in your zone. Like you find a rhythm from day to day, and you have the opportunities to engage in ways that feel fulfilling. And you get to do things that you enjoy. And if it just feels miserable, if it feels like a grind, even amidst like really, really hard seasons, there should be still days that you can highlight as enjoyable, right? Like I've had so many seasons of my life that have been really, really hard, on the business front, on the athlete front. I still love the process, right? I still knew that that's, and so I think, we get, and that gets that in across the board, um, doing hard things has become really romanticized, right? We see that in business, we see that in fitness, and I've talked about that a lot on this podcast because I believe in nuance and I believe in context and I believe in the fact that you can't just say like you're a piece of shit if you don't hustle and wake up at 3 in the morning. Like, like get out of here. Like, hard to what end, right? Hard for what reason? I think we have to ask ourselves like, why is it hard? And is this hard thing adding value? And and if the answer is yes, like great. Like do hard things. Do whatever it takes. I think that there is value in really, really committing and going super deep. It's why I don't believe in balance, right? I'm not interested in balance. I'm interested in going super deep into a few things that I give a shit about. That creates an inherently unbalanced life. Totally fine, right? Because what I am doing is I'm going all in on the areas that matter most to me. That means that some areas aren't getting the same attention, that they're unbalanced. Great, right? I'm not interested in totally giving my attention equally to all. That's going to create apathy, right? It's going to create these areas, it's not going to create excellence through the lens that I define it. And so, like, go do hard things, but they have to be, they have to be fulfilling, right? Like, it shouldn't be miserable. So, I mean, with that in mind, like with this year, um, yeah, we've had really, it's been a dynamic year. I'm horrible at perspective, um, which is why exercises and conversations like this are so valuable for me because I can't, I have a hard time looking back. I'm like forward. Great. We're moving forward. So when I think about this year, there's a ton that's happened. On the success front, um, there's a few things. Impact Initiative, which is the company that you and I co-founded, we officially launched that this time last year. It's been like almost exactly a year, plus or minus a few days. Like that's wild. I feel like it took a long time to build, right? Like we've been in it for longer than that, but the fact that we've traveled all over the country, worked with clients all over the world, um, hired for that company, have people that believe in what we're doing and that mission and vision and believe in us as leaders, and we're able to step into that space fully. Like I can't I can't even like count the successes. Like it's, and that's a great example though. There's been like, it's brutal, right? To build that and to launch another business while we both have other businesses and give that thing your full attention. Really hard days, late nights. We worked weekends nonstop for like a year because that was the only time we had to like build this other thing. Um, Again, but like there was so much value there. Like it never crossed my mind. Well, I should take that back. Of course, it crossed my mind. Like there's times when you're like, "Fuck, I need a day off," right? Like I'm tired, but I just knew it was like this is like I'll do whatever it takes. This is worth it. Um, so again, that's that like hard versus. I was never miserable. It was hard plenty of times, right? And not hard because of like what we were building or like our relationship, but because building it's hard. Like doing anything, like starting something from scratch is a hard thing to do. And it's scary. And yeah, the list goes on. Um, so that's a massive success and really highlights, I think, for me, like what it means, what it looks like in practice to do hard things in alignment with who I want to be in the world. Because what I also didn't do en route to that is lose sight of other things I care about, like my physical health. I have done that in the past, right? So going all in, but in a way that was like supportive of the other areas of my life that I care about. Um, Failure, um, yeah, I mean, again, the list goes on. There's no way to have success without failure. One of the biggest ones that I've had to grapple with is we've pivoted with TEC um, to really support coaches and their ability to build impactful relationships with their athletes and grow um, scalable and revenue producing coaching businesses. I believe in coaches. I believe in coaching as a career, and I want to do everything I can to help as many coaches as possible be able to do what they're passionate about and live a life that they're excited about. And part of that is making the money that they deserve. And so um, TEC's mission is to support those coaches, to leverage what we have so that other coaches can deploy that to accomplish exactly what I just outlined. That has not always been as crystal clear to me as it is right now. Um, and that clarity really has come in the last year or so. And so one of the what failure has looked like, or one of the places failure has occurred, is recognizing that um, a lot of what TEC had been needed to die. It needed. We weren't serving coaches, and by way of that, we weren't serving the athletes that we work with to the fullest extent of how I believe that we can and know that we can by doing business the way we were doing in the past, which was not supporting coaches, which was not working with coaches that were owner minded, that were ready to build, that were excited to grow. And it has nothing to do with the quality of people that were involved with TEC in the past. It has nothing to do with my commitment and belief in those individuals. I would still do anything for those people, but the real fact of the matter is that that wasn't taking us where we needed to go, and it was shortchanging our ability as an organization to support people in the way that I know that we can and really should, like in terms of feel a responsibility to support those people. And so we had to pivot, and what that meant was basically an entire overhaul of the company, and to admit that what I had spent 6 or 7 years building was not going to work, um, was a massive failure. Right? It just was. It didn't work, and I'm okay with that. Like I think it's important to call it what it is. Had I continued down that path, it was not going to work, um, and and that is failure, and that's okay. What all of those experiences allowed me to do cumulatively over those several years was to be crystal clear on what is going to work and what I believe in. And so, I mean, that's a dynamic process. It's a dynamic experience. It's scary. It's hard. So much self doubt. Um, but again, even in those moments, months, where I was like, holy shit, like what are we doing? Is this the right move? Um, I knew I knew that it was still the right decision, and I enjoyed those hard conversations in the sense that, I may not have enjoyed them in the moment, but I knew that having them and making those hard decisions was ultimately going to take me where I wanted to go and help me be the person that I want to be. Um, and so, yeah, massively dynamic year. The amount of, um, yeah, I mean, just the amount of like experiences. And I mean, it literally is like, I don't know if you've heard the adage, it's like 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. It's like, um, it feels like we, in a good way. I mean, we crammed a lot into a year. I mean, it's wild to think about all of the moving pieces, all of the failure, and all of the success. Um, but again, that I think a place where people struggle and where I hope to help people arrive at is that despite all of that, and it was like I just want to be clear, like it was some real dark months. Like it was hard, even with a lot of other really good things going on. And I just highlight that because I can sit here today and genuinely be fired up for the year to come, knowing that the likelihood of similar things playing out is really good. Like, right, like that's fine. Like, so I think where people get is they're not, they like, they hold on to like trauma, right? Almost from like failure and and they're like, I can't do it anymore. Like, I can't, if I set goals, like I'm just going to get punched in the face. Right. And
Mhm.
I think we almost have to, or not almost, we have to get to a place where we're excited to get punched in the face because we recognize the value in the resiliency and the opportunity that creates for us to understand like who we are in the world and how we get to show up and how, like you, I don't know, like hard, hard times create, what's the saying? I forget I'm going
Uh,
to misquote it.
yeah, hard times create strong people. Easy times create weak people.
Right.
Like
Right.
there's some other steps in there,
Um,
but those are the two ends.
yeah. Yeah. Right. So yeah, that's my, I don't know. I think that it's interesting to reflect now, given my experience over the past year and in years previous. I mean, if I go back, like literally every year, you're like, I mean, there's examples of that. Um. So, yeah. So with that, what what's the question I want to ask? Is it? I guess I won't. Maybe we like unpack the hard versus miserable. Like that's what's keeping people from getting excited is they think it's going to be miserable. Or maybe it is going to be miserable. Like maybe they're right. Maybe with the way that they're pursuing these things it sucks.
Yeah.
So how do we, or how have you gotten where that hard is valuable but you don't have to engage with the miserable. I'm gonna say as much. I think there's doses of that. Like I don't want to say like I'm some Zen master, like floating, like there's fucking like I mean, of course, like some days fucking suck, like whatever.
I think
I mean,
when,
they're miserable,
yeah.
but like you can get over that, right? Like I think that's also a good point. Is like it's the pivot around that. You're like, whew, okay, that was brutal. That was a tough run. Let's get back to center here. Let's recognize how I can get away from this miserable and get back to engaging in hard things that are enjoyable that I actually like.
Well, remember, like I don't remember when we had this conversation or where it got posted. So maybe it was the podcast, maybe it was the episode that got messed up. I don't really know. But anyways, the like point of hard versus miserable and what we landed on was that hard is for something greater that you truly believe in. Like there is that return on investment, right? There is that return that we get to the end of that It's like type 2 fun. Miss Lindsay always talks about that. Like it's like type 2 fun. And so many people I don't think even know what that term is. And it's like, no, it's a type of fun that you're like, I actually am probably going to be highly uncomfortable in this process. And yet it's going to be totally worth it because when you're standing at the end of a fight and your face is like bloody, and I have been there. I used to be in kickboxing. I was competitive long ago, like before I had kids, long time. Um, there's something so gratifying about like just standing there and like getting through the fight, or like I think a better version of that most people can understand is a hard hike, or like experiencing something where you get to the end, you're like, that was so worth it. Or labor, like I'm a mom, I'm gonna go there, like labor, you're like, so many people are like, you don't even quite remember the pain of it. And I think there's something so amazing about that. But when you get to the end of it, and you're like, actually nothing, I didn't win the race, I didn't get through the race, I broke my ankle, I didn't get to the top of the mountain, I fought for years and my marriage didn't last. Like I think those are the moments where like that's misery. You get to the end of it and you're like, it was for nothing, unless you can look at it. And that's really where, looking back, you're like, I'm not good at perspective. And I was just listening to you talk about this year, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not good at perspective either. And I don't think most of us are. But we really do it. Like if you have not sat down and looked at the year, then that's a must. You have to sit down and you have to remind yourself. Like I laugh every time I think about it. We're getting ready to do our like look back, no BS look back workshop tomorrow. Um, but it's like every time I do that, and there's a moment where we like give you a way to like unpack and actually look back at the year. I totally forgot we did a retreat at the beginning of last year and it was amazing. Totally amazing. Totally reframed some things that I was like hanging on to in a really unhealthy way. I was like, I literally forgot I was there for 3 days and like set up a whole retreat and like hosted people and the whole thing. Like, how do you forget that? That's so weird, right? But our brains really do look for that. And I think that one of the things that I am heartbroken about, absolutely, just like it's one of these things that I'm like, I can't not continue to fight this fight, is the fact that we just stop with trauma. And this is probably going to be a very unpopular opinion, but I don't care because it's literally taking people's lives. But we're telling people this awful lie that life doesn't need to be hard and that you should always feel accepted and you should always feel embraced and you should always feel good and you should be happy. And that's bullshit. Like that is actually the biggest lie that we're telling our youth and our society. I remember when I first got into purpose work and I'm like, "Oh, purpose is going to be easier." No, it's not, because now you understand what you care about. And so all of a sudden all of the things that don't match up to that, you hate in your life. You're like, "Why did I build this life?" And all of a sudden you realize you have to like unplug yourself and start ripping pieces off of your life because you built a life that you didn't even like. I remember literally selling a business, questioning my marriage, like all of these things. All of the sudden, I went, I don't even like any of this. I got to completely recreate my life. And so I walked in going, "Oh, purpose. I'm going to find my purpose and it's going to be easier." I'm like, that's not what I found. I found my purpose in a lot of ways. I think we're always discovering who we are and the purpose we hold, but I have a really good understanding of it. And that understanding actually led to more pain and trauma. And I think we've labeled trauma, like someone was like, "You can't say you process trauma." And I'm like, "To hell I can't." I'm like, "Come after me." Like I will not sit and let someone sit in their trauma because I'm afraid to talk about trauma because I'm not a licensed blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, like, yes, honor licensing. I'm totally for that. I'm not trying to do things that I'm not, licensed to do. But at the end of the day, we experience trauma, and that's not something that's new to this world. You just don't have to wake up tomorrow and go get your food and be chased by the same lion that chased you today, literally. And so we just go, I'm not doing it anymore. It's too hard. I'm not going to do it again. Where 200, 500 years ago, whatever, insert time, you literally had to go farm, or you literally had to go do the thing, or you didn't eat. And we just stopped. We're like, I'll drive for Uber. I'm not going to do that because I know I'm called to be a speaker. I know I'm meant to do this thing. I know I'm meant to open this business, but actually it's not comfortable. So I'm going to go sit in my car by myself and I'm going to be comfortable because I don't want to experience trauma. I'm traumatized and I have PTSD, and all of those things are very real. I have struggled with them. I have extreme trauma in my life, abuse, all the things. And you can still get up and you can still hit the ground and you can still forge forward because you can do hard things, but they have to be the right hard things. Because if there's no return, it is misery. But I think there's that, again, there's that pendulum that we just get stuck in, myself included. But it's like we get stuck in, we're like, we're just not going to do it because it's hard. And I'm like, life isn't, it shouldn't be easier. It actually should not be easier. If it's easier, doing it wrong. Like you got to push yourself out into the uncomfortable past your comfort zone or you're not living life. And that's, I think those are the two things, Taylor. It's like you have to have the ability to like actually go, I'm going to do this hard thing and I'm going to be traumatized. I'm going to experience stress and trauma and it's going to be hard. And I know why I'm doing it. So I'm going to continue to move forward until I have different information. And then having that ability and the people around you and the tools and the systems around you to actually have the perspective, I think is exactly what we need. But we've stopped. And so that we've stopped and then, or we've stopped taking in perspective and putting people around us. Right. So I think that there's like, if there is, there's a lot of gray area around that. But I think that we just have to go in with the mindset knowing that we're going to be traumatized. We're going to do like, we're going to hate the process sometimes, and we're going to choose to get up and keep doing it. That being said, you have to have those mechanisms around you to make sure that you are taking the data because hard can turn into miserable very fast. Like there is actually a very fine line between there's going to be a return on this and there's no return, therefore it's miserable, right? So I know I just said a lot there, but like that honestly, as you can probably hear, is like something that I'm so passionate about because I myself has stopped so many times and just said, I'm not going to do relationship anymore because I've been hurt. And I have been hurt. I've been really hurt physically, emotionally, all the things. And I have every right to do that. And if I would have done that, I would have never had another family. I would have never been able to build a partnership with you. Like there's so many things in my life that are so, so, so good that I just wouldn't have because I'm like, nope, I'm good. Been there, done that, didn't work. I'm done. Not trying that again, not opening up myself again. And I think that going into this year, I've seen so many leaders that have that perspective. They're like, I have done that. I'm not doing it again. So I'm going to pick the easy, the comfortable, the complacent. I don't want it anymore. And so I think there's just an opportunity to give people both sides, right? To like give people tools to heal, give people tools to understand themselves, and give people tools to like go and take that data so that we can continue to reframe and stay in the fight because it actually it's not good, right? When we just give up, that's true failure. And I don't just mean give up on one thing, but you just won't try again. I think that's where we like really see failure just destroy, is when we're just like, I'm not doing it again. I'm giving up and I'm not doing it again because I'm just too hurt. So I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's my like box and I'm standing on it.
Well, no, I think that's a beautiful place to tie it all together. Honestly, it's just like hard hard has an ROI. I think at the end of the day, like it's and you said that like hard hard has a return, like misery doesn't. And if you're in a place where there's no, if you're setting goals and you're trudging through, and even like right now, if you're at the onset of the year and you've set goals and you're put, and like every day this year has felt like there's no ROI, there's no return, and that could be mentally, physically, financially, wherever, like you should already be seeing some ROI right now. It doesn't mean maybe not from a revenue perspective necessarily, but in how you feel or who's around you or the conversation. Like there should be some return there. And I think that's a good indicator that that it's hard, and it's hard for good reason, and it's hard in the right direction versus miserable. So yeah, this is great. Hopefully this helps everyone. Um, yeah, and I don't know, we could go on and on, but I think that's a really strong place to wrap it up. So thanks for getting on your soapbox, Christine.
You can count on it.